Welcome to It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and early 80s. This is Kara Siegel. I'd like to welcome in Carol Becker Irvine to the It's Been How Long podcast studio today. Hey, Carol.
Hey, how are you?
Good, good. Thanks for agreeing to be on the podcast today.
I think it's fantastic that you're doing it, and it's great to hear and see a lot of our old classmates. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
yeah, no, it is. Thank you. Okay, so here's how we start. We're 40 years plus graduation, almost 44. And what are you up to these days?
I'm president and CEO of a company called Abandoned Property Advisors. We are a very unusual business. We locate missing stockholders. I'll say that slowly. People who move or die, and for whatever reason, they don't update their addresses with their financial institutions. They become lost. There's a whole set of regulations that kind of kick in when that happens. And so that's what my firm does.
Wow, that's something. Um, so besides that, do you do anything for fun?
I do. I love to play golf. I was retired for a bit, unretired, unretired, retired, and then unretired again. So I'm in the unretired phase, but I do love to play golf. We live
A
in
good walk
Florida.
spoiled.
Yeah,
I think
right.
that was the name of it. A good walk spoiled. Yeah.
A good walk spoiled, right? Um, and definitely, or definitely when I'm playing for sure. Um, We live in Florida for part of the year. We're in Naples, and in the summer, we're in Mattapoisett, Massachusetts. And our business is in New Jersey, so I have kind of a three-corner swing.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
get I get nice warm weather, pretty much all the year.
That's great. That's great. And a little less humid up there in Massachusetts, I suspect.
Absolutely, it's beautiful there. And being from Jersey, Philly, I'm still pretty enamored with the the cedar.
Yeah, yeah,
Your house.
yeah. You had mentioned that our classmate, another classmate shares residence there sometimes.
Steve Kanofsky, and when you interviewed him, I think he mentioned it that, he had seen a picture, of me standing by Ned's lighthouse and, reached out to me and told me that his wife's family lives next door.
Yeah,
And, we've tried to hook up, we haven't yet, but hopefully we'll make that connection. But it was really cool to have literally be standing next to his in-laws house and
yeah,
not know. Yeah, it
yeah.
was really.
So, what did you enjoy doing back in high school? I suspect you weren't a golfer back then.
No, no golf. I would say in high school, I really got to try a lot of different things. Um, I ended up as the sports editor of the paper, and I would say that that was really an important job for me when I realized I really liked media and I liked being in journalism. I liked those classes. I liked writing. So it was really a nice jumping off point for me, to be that. And also, I did your Wednesday morning announcements as well. So that was that. Those were really, in my senior year, I would say those are great. I had been in the marching band freshman and sophomore year.
Playing
Uh,
what?
I played the flute, and
Okay.
I played the flute because now my mom's a musician, my sister's a musician. I play the piano, can't really carry that around. And I really wanted to continue being somewhat cool at the bus stop. So I picked an instrument that could fit in my backpack. So flute it was.
Yes, yes.
Flute it
So,
was. I was not very good, but it was a great time. It was a
oh,
great time.
that's great. And so, did you have a job back in high school?
When I'd taken one of the things I loved about East was that you could really try things. I took typing and steno with Lisa Weinstein. We took both of those together. And I had learned to type, and I worked at M&E Marine Supply Company in high school in their shipping department, and I did mail order. And then, it paid for the gas in my car, paid for the car.
Yeah.
So it was actually a really good job, and I was able to do it after school. They were in Collingswood, New Jersey, And it was great to use those typing skills right away. The steno, I admit, never got to use that, but the typing for sure. Typing for sure.
Oh, that's cool. So what did you do after graduation?
Um, we in the senior year, Jeff Lyons and I were picked by Mrs. Carpenter to participate in something called the KYW News Studies Program. And KYW, as part of their community service outreach program, took two kids from all the local high schools, and there was, a good 300 or so of us there. And you got 6 Saturdays in a row. We took the speed line into the city, went to KYW at Fifth and Market, and they taught you about radio. And so they divided us into groups, and I got Don Brewer, the food and wine guy. And I was a little heartbroken because I had big hopes for being with Mary Jo Malone, the city hall reporter, or Richard Maloney, who was the schools reporter, and but I got Don Brewer. And so, you know, they part of the program was you got to record a piece for about your town. So it was supposed to be, maybe a minute, 2 minute piece on your town. And I think I did the Mayor for the Day program that Cherry Hill had run because I had participated in that.
Oh, that's cool.
And so we got to go into the studio to record it. I was in Don Brewer's group, Brewer B, first group, Becker, early on in the recordings. And I went into the studio and I recorded my piece. And I met Nelson Cohen, who was the executive director of the of the station at that time.
That's
And
pretty big
I
wig.
finished. Yeah, big wig, very nice man, did a little chatter with the kids as they came into the studio. Um, and he asked me, he said, how do you like the program? And I said, it's okay. And he says, what do you mean it's okay? And I said, well, I'm a little disappointed. I got Don Brewer. He's the food and wine guy. I was really hoping to get somebody with a little more juice, something a little bit more interesting. And he said, well, all right, I'll tell you what we're going to do. Why don't you come over here? You sit next to me. I'll give you the pad. You take all the ins and out cues, write down the kids' names. You be my assistant for all the kids recording. Will that make you happy? I said, that will make me happy. I will like that. So I got out of Brewer's group. I ended up being in the studio for all the kids recording. At the end of the program, they had this big banquet kind of thing. All the kids come and they were giving out, I don't know, $50, savings bonds to the top 25 kids in the program. And I won one. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Okay. So Nelson Cohen gives me my bond. And after the program, he says to me, so what do you think now? And I said, it was okay. He says, what do you mean? You won. I said, well, I mean, the bond's very nice, but what I really wanted was a job. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what. He takes out a business card and he hands me Ed Belkin's card. And he's the head station manager. And he says, call Ed Belkin tomorrow. Tell him I sent you. And tell him you're interviewing for a job as a desk assistant. I said, okay. So I called Eddie Belkin the next day, got my interview at KYW. I got hired on the spot.
Awesome.
85 cents an hour. I was a desk assistant and I was on my way. So I took
Wow.
the job literally, right after high school. And then that kind of shaped where I went to college.
That's so cool. That's
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah.
So where did you end up going to college?
I went to Temple. It was right up the street. I moved to City Line Avenue and I worked, various shifts. KYW was 24 hours. So I could work, 8 to midnight, and still go to school in the day. And then I got promoted and I was a production assistant from 9 to 2, which kind of changed my school day a bit. And I started to attend Temple a little bit more at night. And then about halfway through, I was asked by Rod Carson. You might remember that name from Shadow Traffic.
Yeah.
Every day, part of my job was to plug him in so he could do the traffic reports. And so one day Rod said, you have a really good voice. Would you be interested in coming over to Shadow Traffic? And I said, sure. why, I'm in sophomore, junior year, and it sounded good. And so I went to shadow traffic. I was hired to be a shadow traffic girl, and uh, moved from Temple to Arcadia, which was
Mhm.
Beaver College at the time.
Yeah.
Going to Temple at night was a little, uneasy. And so I had made that switch at that time.
Oh, cool. So you ended up graduating from Arcadia or from Beaver?
Yeah, I graduated from Beaver about a half a semester late because I had when I was at Shadow Traffic, they'd actually gone bankrupt while I was
Oh.
there, which is, kind of a funky thing, especially as a kid. You don't really even understand all of that. But they had moved Shadow Traffic from 555 City Line to a trucking parts warehouse under the Tacony Palmyra Bridge because the owner's brother owned that
Oh, okay.
space. So when the sheriff came and shut down the office, all the phones and all the equipment got moved there. My dad said to me, it may be time, to give up this career at Shadow Traffic. And it was probably the only time I listened to him. But at that point, I had, kind of disconnected. I changed my major to business and marketing, which, for me was a little bit better because I found that the education at Temple was a little behind the technology. So we were splicing 9 millimeter, and I was working on, you know, 8 track and 9 track tape. so, so for me, it was like, okay, let me go learn something practical if I'm going to pay all this money for this education.
Cool. And so at that point, once you graduated, your um your radio career,
Had quickly ended. I realized that it was union work, and you're young, you want to make some money. Um, so I ended up really falling into my next job. I had had a short stint with an ad agency, and then I had fallen into meeting the owner of a company called Keen Tracers, which located missing stockholders for corporations. You can see where I've really never learned anything since then, other than that. Um, and Worked there. We were 4 people working out of an apartment, then a washer and dryer storage room. Then I was handed the mutual fund directory and told to start at A. And I started doing kind of 2 jobs. I was typing. I was doing a lot of typing. Just graduating college, and then started to my hand at sales, calling mutual funds and pitching Keen's service. And fast forward, to about 2001, we were 140 people. We were the largest firm in the industry. We had a 65% share of the mutual fund industry.
wow.
And all of a sudden, I'm an unclaimed property expert after all that time. Then, I did what a lot of people do, which is burn out. um, in all candor, it was a lot of work, and it was a huge growth period. And over that time, I had a daughter, Emily, who's now 31. I have Ben, who is now 25, and thought, you know what, I don't really want to miss this. So I actually stepped out of business and raised my kids.
Wow. And did you get to be a soccer mom during those days?
In a way, I was the book fair chair. I was
Ooh.
secretary of the PTO.
So you didn't take a
And
back seat. You launched
nah,
yourself into.
I think I always had I always like to work. I always like to stay busy. Um, and so, it was a natural for me to kind of be involved with the kids' school while I was there. Um, there was an incident. Emily went to Abington Friends, and there was a kind of an incident about anti-Semitism in the school, and it was a friend's school, so those things were kind of you know um, surprising, I would say. And after that, a lot of the parents, we kind of looked around and we said, this really isn't an anti-Semitic school, but they're getting a bad rap for something. And but I went to the head of the school and I said, in all the years I've been here, the school never really honored Yom HaShoah.
Mhm.
We have a lot of other, kind of multicultural type of, honors during the year, Martin Luther King Day, and we try to be open to everybody. I said, but you've never really done anything, on Yom HaShoah, and I think it probably would be good, considering 40% of the school was Jewish, if you, kind of put something forward. So they said, why don't you do it? Why don't you help us? I said, okay, okay. And before I know it, my daughter and I are building a museum in our garage, outlining, what occurred during World War II. We brought in a speaker from the Holocaust Museum to, kind of share their story with the kids. And in that process, I had met a man named Chuck Feldman, who was also a parent at the school, and he was running this small little education center called the Holocaust Awareness Museum and Education Center up in Northeast Philly in the JCC Klein branch. And I went to him because I needed some stuff for the walls, some posters. It's there's not a lot of artifacts after the Holocaust.
Yeah.
It's, so I went to him and he said, well, I don't drive, pick me up and we'll go over to my mother's garage. I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be an interesting day. So I pick him up. We go to his mom's garage. He has these really nice posters from the Wiesenthal Museum that he had reproduced that had been sitting in a corner. Took the posters and asked Chuck, a little bit about what he was doing in the museum. Chuck said that they had 8 survivors that they were schlepping around to schools. They were seeing maybe 15 schools a year, maybe saw a few hundred kids, but they really didn't know how to get the word out about their museum. So one thing led to another. I adopted the museum adopted me, and I helped them grow the museum over the years. I think last year they saw over 50,000 kids,
Wow.
and it's been a real success. So a little bit of marketing can go a long way, and right now that education is critical.
Yeah.
So it's great to
Yes.
participate with them.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And so after you mentioned you retired and unretired. Where are we in that sequence?
Well, as life twists and turns, 10 years ago, I re-met Bob Irvine. Name sounds familiar there to you. Bob and I had been competitors in the old days in the industry. Um, and we had re-met happenstance. And he said to me, you belong in this industry. I don't know what you're doing out there, but you should really think about coming back to the industry. You should work with us. You know, you should work with our company. And not only that, can I take you to lunch? I said, all right, well, let's separate those. Let's talk about one at a time. And it was really enticing. Emily was in college. Ben was already in middle school, and he was willing to give me a lot of flexibility. And so I went back and I started working for Bob's company, which was in the same industry as me. And I did take that lunch. And I think you can tell from my last name what happened after that. You find out that the reason that you were competitors is because you're so much alike that, we knew a lot of the same people. We obviously knew each other from when we were young. And that went a long way with me. And so I started working with Bob. And 2 years after I started working with him, his partners elected to sell the company. I
Mm.
said, "Oh, geez, here I am, back in it and now going to be out of it again." So they elect to sell, but just as they were selling the company, we had just won a pretty large piece of business working for the state of Israel, locating the missing Israel bondholders. And so it was kind of a, bittersweet for me because the bidding on that project was great. It was something I knew. It was an affinity group. Nobody else in the company knew what an Israel bond was, and we had won the work. So his company elects to sell. And so I went to the state of Israel and we, kind of bantered about what the options were. Certainly going to the number 2 bidder would be one. They said, well, I'll tell you what, we would like to hire you as a consultant and help us, kind of define what the program looks like. So I said, okay. And I worked for them for a few months. And the other firm could not get through contract. So they said, what do we do? I talked to Bob. Bob said, Carol, we could build this for them. I said, okay, if you say so. He said, we can build it, tell them we'll put this together. This is what we'll do. Made some contacts with some industry former partners. And before you know it, we opened Abandoned Property Advisors in 2015, servicing the state of Israel to locate the missing Israel bondholders. And Bob had a few years where he was, kind of on the sidelines because of the sale of the business. And then he joined me. We had won some work working for the Bank of New York. It was the third time I was working for the bank in my career. And then, we're kind of going along nicely, living in Florida, kind of semi-retired, working at the same time. And then COVID hits, and we find out the old company Bob owned, which had actually merged with the company I used to work for, went up for sale. And the people at the company, a lot of them had worked for Bob, two of them had worked for me. They came to us and they said, the company's going up for sale. Are you guys interested, in taking a look at it? And we said, it was actually up for sale. I said to Bob, oh, geez, I don't know. He's looking at me. I don't know. And then we just dug our heels in. It was COVID. There wasn't a lot going on. We had plenty of time to really assess. And it took us 9 months. I'm on the golf course, October of 2020. I was out there playing. I was talking with the people. We had finalized the price. All right, we're there. Okay. I hang up the phone. I go from the 14th hole to the 15th hole, stand up on the 15th hole. I'm like, wow, this is unbelievable. We're going to buy this company back. I hit my tee. It's a par 3, hit the drive. And I'm looking and I'm saying, I don't see the ball. And I'm
No
looking at him
way.
and I'm like, I don't see the ball. And I get in the cart. We get in the cart and I'm thinking, oh, it probably just, I probably just can't see anymore. I can't see anything anyway. And I go up there and I still don't see the ball. I'm like, no effing way. The
No
whole way.
way. Oh my God.
I walk up, sure enough, ball in the cup, my only hole in one in my life.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I said, okay, this
This
was
is a sign.
this is a sign that we were actually meant to do this. And it's been really interesting. I had never bought a company, I had never owned a company, went to the bank, took out a loan. And before you know it, I've got 42 people working for us, we took 42 of the staff in the acquisition. It was an asset purchase. There was an office in Philly, my old office in Philly. There was the office in New York. We shut both those down. We opened up in Englewood Cliffs, a little closer to where the, kind of some of the key operations staff was living. And we've been running it now for 3 years. We're a little over 50 people. And for the first time in my life, I'm an owner and I'm the president and CEO. So,
That's fantastic. What a great
yeah,
story.
yeah, yeah.
That's amazing.
Never say never. I say to all the women in the company, never say never, you know,
Right.
never
Right.
say never. You never know what'll happen. Just
Absolutely.
keep your
That's
eyes open and be willing, I think.
for sure. For sure.
Right? Yeah.
Uh, have you had a chance to travel through all your business endeavors?
I was really lucky early on in my career because what I did, I was in sales, so I really got to travel the entire country. I think I'm missing 3 or 4 states,
That's great.
and um, and it was for a couple of reasons. One, because corporate America was all over, and probably the best part of my job was I got to go to all the major corporation headquarters. Which I was young. I always said, I want to meet Lee Iacocca. That was always my big thing. I want to meet Lee Iacocca. I want to
Yeah.
go right into his office. And so I got to go to Quaker Oats. They have a giant Quaker Oats in the lobby. I was at National Linen. I like Diet Coke. And, anybody who knows me knows I'm a bit of a Diet Coke Zero fan. And I went to Coca-Cola, and on every floor they have free soda. every button. I'm like, "Oh, this is a dream." I went to Alliance Bernstein when they were really early on up in Jersey, and they had just started what I would call humanitarian treatment of employees because they were offering fruit and all kinds of snacks and yogurt and on every floor. So when they were touring me around their big operations center, they were showing me, the free fruit and the free yogurt. That was really novel in those days. I've been to Transamerica, I've been to Sears, I've been to, Chrysler. Um, you
Did
know,
you ever get to meet Lee Iacocca?
I never got to meet Lee Iacocca, but I did get to see his office because I
Okay.
did ask the corporate secretary to take me there when I visited. I wasn't gonna quite let that go. I wanted to work for AT&T. I ended up handling the divestiture of the Bells, which was a huge, deal. Now they've put them all back together, which is kind of crazy, but in '85, they were splitting them into all those companies. So that was cool. I got to go to every Bell. Um, and so, I really loved, I was always excited about my career because I always was learning something. I went to Goodyear's headquarters, and believe it or not, they have a museum called the World of Rubber next to it. And you actually can go in and see how they, make rubber. At Harley Davidson, they have a Harley museum, so a lot of these corporations have just phenomenal history associated with them. And that was always to me, really cool. So I've gotten to see the country from that. Took me a long time to be able to travel internationally. I think, like everybody else, until your kids are grown and gone, it's really hard to make
Yeah.
that leap. But I've been really lucky. Bob's daughter lives in Amsterdam, and she lived in Italy for a little while. So, shucks, we have to visit. Um, and so we've been using that kind of as a jumping off point to now there's two grandchildren to kind of take them on vacation, and instead of, having them schlep to the US, which is never fun. We're trying to make it, more of a family affair. I definitely had to get to Israel, and I did do that. That was very high on the list, and I'm really glad I did. Um, and Bob and I did that, together. We love golf and we like watching golf. So I did get to see Tiger win the 2019 Masters.
Oh,
Which was
awesome.
really wild. So that was a cool trip. But we also went to the Open Championship at St. Andrews.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
that was
The home of golf.
Yeah, the 150th. So,
Wow.
Bob's a huge sports fan and, has an incredible brain for sports history. So, if there's something iconic about to happen, he usually says, "Let's go." So, I've been really lucky that way. So, I've gotten to, go to some really cool golf tournaments. I took my daughter to Super 2 Eagles Super Bowls, so that
Oh,
was cool.
nice. Nice.
There's a little rivalry in the house because he's from Boston. So, and I'm a diehard Eagles Philly fan. He didn't go with us to that one. I'll just say that.
Ooh, the
Uh,
Sixers won their playing game last night, so
by 1 point, right?
by 1 point.
By one
With a
point.
big comeback that they had not
Big
done.
comeback. I thought for
Yeah.
sure they were going to lose that game. But yeah, big sports fan. So anything connected to sports, you'll see us there.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah.
great. So, is there a class at East or a teacher at East that influenced you beyond your high school days?
I would say there were two, and he wasn't a high school teacher, but everybody knows him. Bill Kovnat, for sure, was very influential in my life. I had him in art in middle school, but he definitely kicked me off for high school because in that class, you know, he really encouraged you to be artistic. And, I'd always thought, okay, books, learn everything you're supposed to learn, and I really hadn't thought much about art other than my father was a graphic designer, which, I knew from that. But Bill was, I think, very important to me because he really encouraged me to explore art. And I went on after middle school to actually take art lessons and paint
Hmm.
and sculpt and do a lot of things as a result of him. I would say Mrs. Carpenter for sure, because if she had never set me up with that new studies program, my career would have probably taken a much different trajectory. And I would say that, she was very encouraging. Um, of me to pursue broadcasting. She thought I had what it took, and that was really important to me. My parents were divorced, and I didn't have the best situation at home, so it was really good for me to hear from another adult. My mom was great. Things were just a little chaotic, I would say, at home. So,
Sure. Sure.
so she was very grounding for me and encouraging and really helped me fix myself on my direction. English too. I don't remember the name of my English teacher, but you might. Um, she was a brunette, tall, thin gal. Um, and
Not
she
off the
was
top of my head.
excellent also. Yeah, I can't remember her name, but
Mhm.
she also our English teacher, because she really encouraged me to um, write, to write creatively, and to submit my writing for competition. And I actually won a short story competition because of that. We had been doing a unit on Edgar Allan Poe, and so I wrote a short horror story or whatever mystery story, and I won, and it was put in a book
That's
of
so cool.
it was a young authors competition. So I would say the writing, the broadcasting, it all came together for me that way. I
Cool.
knew I wasn't good at music, and I definitely couldn't dance.
So did you have a high school sweetheart?
I had two high school sweethearts. Ricky Rufo was my boyfriend in freshman and sophomore year. Um, Ricky played with Reggie in a
Mm,
band, so I was an early fan of Reggie's
and here we go.
music,
Plug.
uh, and still to this day, yep. If I can catch a show, I definitely try. I think he makes me feel young. Every time he gets up on that stage, Reggie makes me feel like I'm back in sitting in the driveway watching those guys play in the garage.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say Ricky, definitely, and we're still friends. And Mike Camerasana, you may remember from the yearbook, we won cutest couple. I
Yeah.
still am in touch with his sister Lisa. Um, Michael, I know is with Val DePena now,
Oh,
so I think that's really cool. They're probably the best looking couple I know, um, and so yep, those two pretty much. I dated David Ladd a little bit at the end, but was sure. Prom dates, kind of things like that. I need a
yeah.
prom date.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have friends at East you're still in touch with?
I am. Facebook has been fantastic from that perspective because, it's just cool, just like you're doing now, interviewing people, seeing what happened to them. I think Facebook definitely brings that out in all of us. So, I've seen Karen Higgins because of, we all went to see Reggie. Lisa Weinstein Gilman is still a very close friend of mine. Reggie, obviously, I'll stay in touch with. Jody Graham. Um, I am in touch with Patrice. I was out in California and I, tried to meet up with her. I went to the reunion, so that was
Hmm.
great to see everybody there. Um, so I would say,
Ooh, uh, just a
Richmond,
thought, just a
Kroll.
thought, that on the class reunion website now, there Alan Feldman's put up a poll about when for the next reunion. So
Yeah,
just
I put August 25th. I answered.
April 25th. April
April
25th.
25th. April
Yeah.
25th. Yeah, April
Okay.
25th.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'm in.
Okay.
Um, so I definitely, it was great seeing everybody there. I would say I saw Paul Richmond and Daryl Kroll over on the East Coast in Boca. I love
Hmm.
keeping up with them. Great people. So it's been nice. Here and there, if I'm in a town and I know somebody's there, I'll touch base with them. Gail Goldblatt and I were trying to hook up actually tomorrow, but we can't quite make it, but we're going to try to reschedule that. She's
Yeah.
down in Marco and I'm in Naples. So
Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
I think
Anybody
it's,
you were tight with that you lost track of?
hmm,
I mean, a
I
lot of
would
people reconnected on Facebook, so.
Yeah, not really. I mean, come senior year, I was pretty, one foot out the door, I would
Mhm.
say. Um, And, so I think I kept my best friends. And like I say, at the reunion, it was great to see people who I really hadn't thought about. And then I saw them. I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
it's really great to see you. Jeff, Craig, Brian Lane. Brian Lane does some work with us. He does documents, storage and shredding. So
Mhm.
I called him up one day and I said, we got all these boxes. Can you help us out? So he drove up. So yeah, it's great to try to reconnect. We all have something in common, and I would say this gives me a really good opportunity to just give a shout out to Robin. Um, Robin and I have stayed in touch through her journey. Um, I admire her more than I think anybody I've ever met. She is the strongest woman I've ever met. And she's really taught me an awful lot about the future for all of us. And I think it's a lot of things that none of us really give a lot of thought to if you don't have to. But I appreciate her friendship and lots of love to Robin.
Yeah. And prayers. And prayers. Um, any standout memory from high school? I mean, that story about KYW is obviously a standout. Any others? But again, that's pretty
I
remarkable.
would say, the last memory is sometimes the best memory. I was the last speaker at the graduation. Of course, I submitted a writing competition. I entered a competition for writing, and I won the benediction, the very last speech. So, you're nervous, and here I am standing in front of our entire class. I'm the last speaker. It's hot as heck. It's June. Everybody's dying, and the beach balls start to fly around. I swear, everybody, I talked as fast as I could so that we could get out of there. But I would say my last memory was certainly a memory,
Yeah.
and I still carry that one with me. It definitely changes how I look at audiences.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Anything you wish classmates knew about you either back then or now?
Ooh, I would say I I probably would have liked to have participated more with the Jewish groups, with some of the, with the sorority and whatnot. But, given my household, there wasn't a lot of extra money for stuff. And so I would say I had a very, very strong Jewish feeling. And I'm a religious girl. And I probably would have enjoyed more um, some of the extracurricular activities and whatnot, because I loved Hebrew school. I went on after Hebrew school to read the Megillah at Purim. Um, and so I probably would have bonded very well with those groups if I had been around them more. But I'm getting
Yeah.
to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Have you had a chance to go back to the building or be in the building at all or?
I'm a crazy woman. I haven't changed my hairdresser. Okay. Since I lived in Cherry Hill.
Oh
Okay.
my
So
gosh.
there's a little secret getting out. He's in Haddonfield, Salon 14 North, and I still go back. So for me, it's great because I'm back in Haddonfield. I go visit Lisa in Cherry Hill. We'll go to the kosher nosh, and I get to check out some of the newer restaurants. I drove by Kamitsky's a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, I haven't been in the school, but I definitely love going back to the neighborhood. And because I'm a crazy woman, I get to go back there a fair amount.
Well, that's great. That's great. So we're back in 1980. You're looking out 40 plus years. Is this where you saw yourself?
Oh God, no. I thought for sure I was going to be a broadcaster on TV. Um, I didn't even know what unclaimed assets were, let alone imagine that I would somehow become an expert in that field of law. Um, so I would say no. I never expected that this is where I would end up, and but it's cool. Sometimes life just you know you go where it takes you, and you can be pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. Did you enjoy high school?
I loved high school. I really did. I mean, for me, it was really a safe haven. There were so many people. I mean, think about it. From your freshman year to your senior year, your friend groups changed. I got to try a lot of things there. I really loved being at school.
Mm.
Um, I wasn't as always 150% committed to the study side of things. I was, a bit of a social butterfly there, here and there. But I wouldn't change a thing about it. I thought it was a great, great place to get to go to school.
That's great. Best piece of advice you would go back and give your 18-year-old self, or maybe you've given your 18-year-old kids?
I always say to the kids, don't be afraid to ask. You know, nothing comes unless you open your mouth. If you're lucky enough to meet somebody who can read your mind and sees an opportunity for you, that's great. But the likelihood is that's not going to occur. So don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing that can happen is somebody says no and you adjust. So they know that about me. And the other is work hard, play hard, because we believe in that too. So I would say those are the two, and I still stand by them.
Oh, those are great. That's great advice for all of us. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, we've reached our fast and furious finish. So did you have a favorite TV show or a favorite movie or a favorite book from back during high school?
We weren't allowed to watch a lot of TV. Um, Although, my sister and I snuck in all the regular shows. I would say, reading wise, I fell in love with John Steinbeck. They had us read, a couple of Steinbeck books, and then I read Grapes of Wrath on my own. And I would say that that was a huge eye opener for me, because it taught me about a culture I didn't know about, in a land I had never been to, about people I really couldn't necessarily relate to. Um, and it was a real eye opener. And so I think from there, I just started reading a lot more because I realized how much I didn't know.
Mhm. And did you have a favorite musical group, artist, or genre of music other than Heaven's Sake?
I am I would say I liked rock with the country angle to it. I'm a huge Doobie Brothers fan.
Oh yeah.
uh, I'm a major Doobie Brothers fan. We used to say "Hoobie Doobie Yoobie."
Hmm.
Uh, I liked Steely Dan. I liked Kansas. I liked Alabama. I liked all of the,
Leonard
kind
Skinner.
of all of Leonard Skinner. My first concert, unfortunately, was Black Sabbath, and that didn't go well. Um, but uh, but I would say I was, pretty much into the music of the time.
Yeah, yeah. So did you have a favorite place to hang out with friends or eat with friends?
I always joke that we hung out in the woods a lot because that was the truth. Everybody was building forts. Everybody had a fort. I lived in Eagle Oak, and so there was a lot of woods between us, and so there was a lot of forts going on in my neighborhood. So there's a lot of that, a lot of basements. Hung
Yeah.
out in a lot of basements. Mine had the basement was actually on the ground level. You could walk outside
Oh,
from our basement. So we were actually a big basement because your parents couldn't see who was
yeah,
coming in and out of the basement. I would also say Hebrew school.
yeah,
There was a supermarket behind Beth Shalom, and between the supermarket and Hebrew school, I hung out a fair amount there, and work, a lot of
yeah.
work. Yeah.
All right. Here's the point.
Ugh.
Okay. Did you like your photo? Did you like your quote? And your quote is, why not have a girl sports editor? Which I think is a
That's
great quote.
right. That's right. The grammar could have been fixed a little there, but yeah, I like the quote because at the time I was feeling, pretty different. It was a competitive role. I was working for the fabulous Joan Bueller, who ended up having a career in writing and in media. Um, so yeah, I agree with that. I don't know what I was thinking with that perm, but we'll just say wasn't a great choice. And then we went with black and white photos. So I'm not saying it looks the best, but hey, it's a
Was what it
memory.
was. Yeah.
That's what it was.
All right. Language. Which language did you take and have you found it useful?
I took Spanish. I would say I you know, I took 2 years of Spanish, and I never really got to apply it. Um, I would say, I still haven't gotten to really apply it, which is a shame. I wish I knew more Hebrew because that I could apply in my current role. We're working with the Israeli government. But I would say, no, learning the language of finance was enough for me.
Okay. All right. So parting shot. Anything you want to tell anybody who's listening, someone, everyone from the class?
I would say everybody should do this. Everybody should be on one of your podcasts because I think it's great. I think it's great
Uh,
to see everybody. I think it's great, to hear everybody's stories. And, it's heartwarming to see really just how everybody turned out. So I
yeah.
would say, sign up.
Okay. Well, thanks for the plug. Well, Carol, thank you again for doing this. This is great. This was a lot of fun. And if you find yourself wandering up North Carolina way, give me a shout.
I will. I will.
Well,
You and Eddie. You
yeah,
and Eddie,
yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
That
All
would be
right.
great.
And if not, we'll see you in April or May or whenever it is next year,
Okay.
up at home. Okay.
Absolutely.
All
I'll be
right.
there. All
Sounds
right.
good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on It's Been How Long? The podcast about Cherry Hill High School East students from the late 1970s and the early 80s. A shout out to my cousin Brad Corbett, whose podcast We Weren't Friends in High School inspired me to do this podcast and whose advice and encouragement have been so helpful. Thanks also to my husband, Randy Cockdale, who read all the fine print on the podcast hosting website so I wouldn't have to. And thanks to Jeff Lyons, content consultant and guinea pig, and to Deborah Smead, also content consultant. And thank you to all our classmates who are listening in. See you next week.